First contact and deception. The quantum sensors aboard the Kraken Collective's flagship Deepwater Ascendancy registered the human fleet long before visual confirmation. High Admiral X Thraxis watched the holographic display with all four of his eyes, his tentacles rippling with barely contained disdain. The readings couldn't be correct. The vessels approaching their position were using primitive fusion drives, their hulls composed of basic alloys that the Collective had abandoned millennia ago. Curious, he projected through his neural link to his command staff. These humans still rely on physical matter for their ships. How quaint. The neural response from his officers carried undertones of amusement. The Collective had evolved beyond such limitations, their bioorganic vessels grown from modified stellar matter, each one a living extension of their aquatic heritage. The human ships maintained their course, apparently unaware they had already been detected. Next, Thraxis had studied the reports about this species, barely 2 centuries into space travel, yet they had already colonized dozens of systems. Their expansion rate was remarkable, he had to admit, but their technological level was laughable by collective standards. Initiate first contact protocols, he commanded. Let's see how they respond to a proper demonstration of power. The Deepwater Ascendancy shifted its quantum state, its massive form becoming visible to conventional sensors. The vessel was a marvel of bioengineering, its organic crystalline structure flowing like water frozen in time, nearly 30 kilometers from bow to stern. The human fleet's reaction was not what he expected. Instead of panic or awe, their formation tightened with practiced precision. A communication request came through on basic electromagnetic frequencies. Next, Thraxis allowed it through, curious about these primitives' response to meeting their betters. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Identify yourself and state your intentions. The voice was calm, professional, without a hint of intimidation. Thraxis projected his response through the universal translator. I am High Admiral Thraxis of the Kraken Collective. Your species has expanded into space that will soon be required for our own purposes. We offer you the opportunity to submit to our authority and benefit from our superior civilization. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. I see, Admiral Chen replied. And if we decline this generous offer, then we will be forced to demonstrate why the Collective has remained unchallenged for 12,000 years. Thraxis gestured, and the Deepwater Ascendancy began to shift its quantum state again, this time revealing only a fraction of its true combat capabilities. Smaller escort vessels emerged from subspace, their crystalline forms arranging themselves in the Collective's standard combat formation. The human admiral's next words carried an edge that Thraxis' translator had trouble interpreting. Interesting proposal. Here's our counteroffer. The space around the human fleet suddenly blazed with energy signatures. Hundreds of small objects, previously undetectable, activated simultaneously. Thraxis' sensor officers reacted with alarm as their readings went haywire. What you're seeing, Chen continued, are our Mark VI defense platforms. Relatively simple technology by your standards, I'm sure. Just basic antimatter catalysts and quantum disruption fields. We find that sometimes the simple solutions work best. Thraxis felt his chromatophores flush with anger. You dare to threaten the Collective. Your primitive weapons cannot harm our evolved forms. Perhaps, but you might want to check your quantum field integrity. Those primitive defense platforms have been mapping your ship's resonance frequencies since you arrived. Every living vessel has a unique quantum signature, even ones as advanced as yours. The High Admiral's sensor officers were now projecting waves of concern. The human devices had indeed been probing their quantum fields, finding harmonics that shouldn't have been possible with their level of technology. The defense platforms were generating interference patterns that were starting to affect the Collective ship's quantum coherence. This is your final warning. Chen's voice remained steady. Withdraw from Earth space, or we will be forced to demonstrate why humanity doesn't respond well to threats. Thraxis felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Uncertainty. The humans had hidden their true capabilities, allowing the collective to underestimate them. Their primitive appearance was a facade, concealing a level of tactical sophistication that he hadn't anticipated. "You're bluffing," he projected, but his chromatophores betrayed his unease. "Your species cannot possibly." The defense platforms pulsed in perfect synchronization. The quantum field maintaining the deep-water ascendancy's evolved form fluctuated, sending waves of discomfort through its living structure. Warning signals flooded Anxithrax's neural link as secondary systems began to fail. "As I said," Chen's voice carried a note of finality. "Sometimes the simple solutions work best. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures. After that, we'll show you what happens when you underestimate humanity." The High Admiral of the Kraken Collective, master of a civilization that had dominated space for 12 millennia, felt his tentacles curl in frustration. They had assumed their evolved technology made them invincible, but these humans had found a weakness no one had exploited before. With their quantum fields compromised, the collective's ships were vulnerable in ways they had never anticipated. Perhaps, Anxithraxis projected carefully, "we should continue this discussion through diplomatic channels." "A wise choice, Admiral. We'll transmit coordinates for a neutral meeting ground. And next time, try asking nicely first. You might be surprised how well that works with humans." As the Deepwater Ascendancy initiated withdrawal procedures, Anxithraxis began composing his report to the Collective Council. How could he explain that a species using primitive technology had just forced the mightiest fleet in known space to retreat? The humans had achieved what should have been impossible. They had turned the Collective's greatest strength into a vulnerability. The High Admiral's final thought, before his ship entered quantum transit, was that the Collective had made a dangerous mistake. They had judged humanity by their apparent level of technology, never considering that simplicity might be a choice rather than a limitation. It was a lesson they wouldn't forget. The Hidden Fleet. The Kraken Collective's strategic analysis chamber was unusually crowded. Hundreds of senior officers floated in the nutrient-rich solution, their neural networks interconnected as they reviewed the encounter with the humans. High Admiral Anxithraxis' memory stream played for the 20th time, each detail scrutinized by the finest tactical minds in the Collective. "Impossible," projected Supreme Commander Valthrix, her bioluminescent patterns flashing with frustration. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. These readings must be flawed." Admiral Chen sat in her own command center millions of kilometers away, watching real-time quantum surveillance feeds of the Collective's gathering. The Kraken's supposedly undetectable communications were being intercepted and decoded by arrays of simple quantum receivers scattered throughout human space. Sometimes, being primitive had its advantages. "They're still trying to figure out how we did it," she remarked to her XO, Commander David Santos. "How long until the fleet is in position?" Santos checked his neural interface, a simple device compared to the Kraken's evolved neural networks, but far more secure. "Ghost Fleet is at 92% deployment. The Collective hasn't detected a single ship." The Ghost Fleet was humanity's masterpiece of misdirection. While the Krakens had focused on the obvious human military presence, thousands of advanced vessels had been quietly moving into position throughout human space. Their quantum signature masking technology wasn't as sophisticated as the Collective's, but it didn't need to be. The ships simply mimicked the background noise of space itself, hidden in plain sight. Back in the analysis chamber, a junior tactical officer suddenly projected alarm. "Supreme Commander, we're detecting anomalous quantum fluctuations throughout the sector." "Specify," Valthrix demanded. "The background quantum noise. It's changing." "No, not changing. Moving." The chamber erupted in chaos as the truth became clear. What they had dismissed as normal space phenomena were actually ships. Thousands of them, their signatures suddenly strengthening as they dropped their disguise. Admiral Chen smiled as the reports came in. Ghost Fleet deployment complete. All ships showing green status. She opened a channel to the Collective's analysis chamber, knowing they would be monitoring all frequencies. Supreme Commander Valthrix, this is Admiral Chen. I believe it's time we had a proper introduction. The collective leaders watched in stunned silence as their holographic displays revealed the true extent of humanity's military presence. The primitive human fleet they had encountered earlier was merely the tip of the iceberg. The Ghost Fleet vessels were far more advanced, incorporating technology that rivaled or exceeded the collective's capabilities in several areas. How? Valthrix projected, her confusion bleeding through the universal translator. You allowed us to believe that we were technologically inferior. Chen finished. Yes, we did. The Kraken Collective isn't the first advanced civilization we've encountered, and we learned early on that appearing less capable than we are has distinct tactical advantages. Santos displayed the tactical overlay, showing how the Ghost Fleet had systematically surrounded the collective's primary staging areas. Your evolved ships are impressive, he added, but they have one significant weakness. They're predictable. Biological systems, even highly advanced ones, follow patterns. Machines don't have to. The Ghost Fleet ships were unlike anything the collective had seen before. Where their bioorganic vessels were smooth and flowing, these human ships were angular, aggressive, their hulls bristling with weapons that defied easy classification. They represented a perfect fusion of biological and mechanical engineering, combining the best aspects of both approaches. Your civilization has spent millennia evolving your technology along a single path, Chen continued. We chose a different approach. Humanity doesn't evolve. We adapt. We don't wait for natural selection. We create what we need when we need it. The quantum surveillance feeds showed the collective leaders' bioluminescent patterns shifting rapidly, their equivalent of intense discussion. They had assumed humanity's seemingly disparate technological development was a sign of primitive chaos. Now they realized it was a deliberate strategy, allowing humans to approach problems from multiple angles simultaneously. The defense platforms that disrupted your quantum fields, Chen explained. That was old technology, developed centuries ago when we first encountered quantum-based life forms. We kept it simple because simple tools are harder to detect and counter. But make no mistake, we can match or exceed your technological sophistication when we choose to. Valthrix's pattern stabilized, a sign of decision. You concealed your true capabilities deliberately. The diplomatic contact request was genuine, Chen assured her. Humanity prefers peaceful cooperation when possible, but we've learned to negotiate from a position of strength. The Ghost Fleet ensures that strength. The Supreme Commander was silent for a long moment, analyzing the situation with the full processing power of her evolved consciousness. The humans had outmaneuvered them completely, using the collective's own assumptions against them. More importantly, they had done so without firing a single shot. Perhaps, Valthrix projected carefully, we should reconsider our approach to human space. You clearly understand the value of multiple perspectives. Chen's smile widened slightly. I'm glad we understand each other, Supreme Commander. Shall we begin those diplomatic discussions now? As equals. The collective had encountered many species in its long history, but none quite like humanity. In their quest for perfection through evolution, they had forgotten that adaptation could take many forms. The humans hadn't just surprised them. They had forced the collective to question assumptions that had gone unchallenged for millennia. As the diplomatic channels opened, both sides knew that the balance of power in the galaxy had shifted. The Kraken Collective had finally met a species that could match them, not just technologically, but strategically, and they had learned a valuable lesson. True superiority lies not in raw capability, but in how those capabilities are used. Adaptability versus superiority. Peace talks were interrupted 3 days later when a rogue Kraken battle group, led by traditionalist commander Zexthar, launched an unauthorized attack on the human colony of New Horizon. The separatist faction refused to accept the collective's diplomatic overtures, believing that submission to primitive life forms would taint their evolutionary perfection. Admiral Chen watched the tactical display aboard the advanced stealth cruiser Prometheus as the battle group approached the seemingly defenseless colony. Status of civilian evacuation complete, Santos reported. Underground shelters are sealed and shielded. The colonists are safe. And our surprise, in position and waiting. The Krakens won't know what hit them. The Separatist fleet emerged from quantum space in perfect attack formation, their bioorganic ships pulsing with deadly intent. Zexthar's flagship, the evolutionary Apex, dwarfed its escorts, its crystalline structure reflecting the light of New Horizons' twin suns. Humans, Zexthar broadcast on all frequencies. Your deceptions end here. Face us in honorable combat, or watch your colony burn. Chen's response came not in words, but in action. The surface of New Horizons' largest ocean began to boil, superheated steam rising in massive clouds. From the depths emerged humanity's newest weapon, the Leviathan-class submersible carrier. The massive vessel, nearly as large as Zexthar's flagship, represented a radical departure from traditional space combat doctrine. It was designed to operate in both water and vacuum, using the ocean's mass as a natural stealth system. The Kraken sensors, optimized for quantum state detection in space, had completely missed its presence. Impossible, Zexthar projected. No ship that size could operate in both environments. That's your problem, Chen transmitted as the Leviathan launched its first wave of hybrid fighters. You keep thinking in terms of impossible when you should be thinking how. The fighters were another human innovation. Biomechanical craft that combined organic neural networks with quantum-enhanced engines. They moved with a fluidity that matched the Kraken ships, but their attack patterns were unpredictable, driven by human intuition rather than evolutionary programming. Zexthar's fleet responded with typical Kraken efficiency, their weapons transforming space into a deadly light show of quantum disruption fields and plasma streams. But the human fighters adapted instantly, their tactical neural networks learning and evolving strategies faster than the Kraken's biological programming could respond. Second wave, launch, Chen commanded. The Leviathan's massive launch bays opened again, but this time released something entirely different: autonomous drone swarms. Thousands of small, simple machines that individually posed no threat to a Kraken warship. But together, their quantum fields are fragmenting, Santos reported with satisfaction. The drones are replicating the defense platform effect, but with much finer control. The Kraken ships began to lose coherence as the drone swarms mapped and exploited their quantum resonance frequencies. Their evolved defenses, designed to handle massive energy attacks, were helpless against this death by 1,000 cuts. You see, Zexthar, Chen transmitted, evolution is a powerful force, but it has one major flaw. It can only solve problems it has encountered before. Humanity's strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to imagine new problems and create new solutions. The evolutionary Apex struggled to maintain its quantum state as dozens of human fighters executed precision strikes against its weakened sections. Zexthar's response was rage mixed with disbelief. You cannot defeat us. We are the pinnacle of natural selection. Natural selection. Chen's voice carried a hint of pity. That's exactly the point. There's nothing natural about war, Commander. It's an artificial challenge that requires artificial solutions. The battle reached its climax as the Leviathan itself rose from the ocean into low orbit, water still cascading from its armored hull. Its main weapon wasn't a quantum cannon or plasma projector, but something far simpler. A modified mass driver that used the ocean's water as ammunition, flash-frozen into hypersonic projectiles by exposure to space. Target their flagship, Chen ordered. Let's show them how primitive technology can be when properly applied. The Leviathan's mass driver spoke, launching a barrage of ice projectiles at relativistic speeds. The frozen fragments, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, struck the evolutionary Apex with devastating force. No quantum field could fully deflect such simple kinetic energy. Zexthar's flagship, pride of the Separatist fleet, began to break apart. The commander's final transmission was thick with disbelief. "How can you be so strong without following the path of evolution?" "Because," Chen replied, watching as the remaining Kraken ships fled or surrendered, "evolution is about surviving the past. Humanity is about creating the future." The counterstrike. The defeat at New Horizons sparked a civil war within the Kraken collective. While the main government maintained its diplomatic stance with humanity, separatist factions gained strength, drawing support from those who saw cooperation with lesser beings as an evolutionary regression. Dozens of worlds erupted in conflict as the collective's carefully maintained order began to crack. Admiral Chen stood before the Earth Defense Council, her holographic form projected into the secure chamber beneath the Himalayas. "The separatists are gaining ground. They've adapted their tactics based on New Horizon, and they're targeting civilian installations across 3 sectors. Council leader Marcus Zhang leaned forward, his augmented eyes scanning real-time battle data. "Your recommendation, Admiral. A preemptive strike, not against their fleets, against their ideology. The separatists believe their evolutionary superiority makes them invincible. We need to prove that evolution can work against them." The plan Chen proposed was audacious. Instead of engaging the separatist forces directly, humanity would target the quantum resonance fields that the Krakens used for faster-than-light communication. These fields, evolved over millennia, were as much a part of their biology as their physical forms. "They've never experienced true isolation," Chen explained. "Their entire society is built on constant neural connection. Break that connection, and their supposed evolutionary superiority becomes a weakness." The Council approved the operation unanimously. Within hours, the Ghost Fleet began its most complex deployment yet. Instead of warships, they launched millions of tiny quantum disruption beacons, each one designed to emit a signal that would interfere with the Kraken's natural quantum resonance. "Think of it as electromagnetic pollution," Santos explained to his tactical officers. "Except instead of radio waves, we're flooding their communication spectrum with quantum noise. Their evolved systems can't filter it out because they've never needed to." The effect was immediate and devastating. Separatist forces, cut off from their neural networks, found their ships responding sluggishly. Their evolved tactical systems, dependent on constant quantum state updates, began to degrade. But the psychological impact was even worse. "They're experiencing something they haven't felt in thousands of years," Chen observed, watching the separatist formations break apart. Individual consciousness, isolation, fear. The loyalist Krakens, warned in advance, had modified their systems based on human quantum shielding technology. They watched with their human allies as their rebellious brethren floundered in the electronic fog of war. Supreme Commander Valthrix, coordinating with Chen from her flagship, projected a mix of awe and concern. "You've weaponized our own evolution against us. The implications are precisely why we're sharing this technology with the loyalist forces." Chen finished. "Humanity doesn't want to defeat the collective. We want to help you grow beyond the limitations of pure evolution." The separatist response was predictable. They attempted to force their way through the quantum disruption fields using brute computational power. But their evolved systems, optimized for efficiency, couldn't handle the increased load. Ship after ship fell into confusion as their biological computers essentially experienced sensory overload. "Target their command and control nodes," Chen ordered. "Let's end this before they hurt themselves trying to overcome their own programming." The Ghost Fleet emerged from stealth, their advanced targeting systems identifying the separatist command ships through the quantum chaos. But instead of destroying them, they launched a new weapon, quantum synchronization pods that would force the separatist ships to experience something many of them had never known: direct, unfiltered contact with non-Kraken consciousness. "What are you doing?" Zexthar's successor, High Marshal Kralthex, demanded as his ship's quantum fields were synchronized with human brainwave patterns. "This is violation." His neural transmission cut off as, for the first time in his existence, He experienced reality through human perception. The rigid certainty of evolutionary programming gave way to the chaotic, creative potential of human thought. "This is who we are," Chen transmitted to all synchronized vessels. "Not your evolutionary enemies or your technological inferiors. We're simply different, and in difference, there is strength." The separatist fleet hung motionless in space as their crews grappled with this forced perspective shift. Their evolved brains, experiencing human consciousness patterns, began to understand what their leaders had been trying to tell them. Evolution wasn't just about becoming stronger or more efficient. Sometimes it was about learning new ways to think. Evolution of war. 1 year after the quantum synchronization event, the Grand Hall of the Earth Collective Concordat hummed with activity. Representatives from both species gathered to commemorate the formal alliance between humanity and the unified Kraken Collective. The massive chamber, designed to accommodate both aquatic and terrestrial life forms, symbolized the new era of cooperation. Admiral Chen stood beside Supreme Commander Valthrix, watching as human engineers worked with Kraken evolutionary specialists to install a new type of quantum communication array, one that could bridge the gap between evolved and artificial consciousness. "Your solution was elegant," Valthrix projected, her bioluminescent patterns showing admiration. "You didn't just defeat the separatists. You gave them a new path of evolution." Chen nodded, remembering the aftermath of the synchronization. "We understood that forcing them to see through human eyes, even briefly, would change them forever. You can't unknow a new perspective." The impact had been profound. The separatists, after experiencing human consciousness, had discovered something their rigid evolutionary path had never considered: the power of cognitive diversity. Their ships and technology, once purely biological, now incorporated elements of human design, creating hybrid systems more capable than either approach alone. "We thought evolution was a straight line," former High Marshal Kralthex commented, his own patterns showing the complex harmonics of a mind forever altered by human contact. "Always forward, always more refined. We never considered that true evolution might mean embracing chaos, incorporating the unexpected." The evidence of this new philosophy was everywhere. Human quantum physicists worked alongside Kraken evolutionary engineers, combining their approaches to create technologies that neither species could have developed alone. The rigid hierarchy of the collective had given way to a more flexible structure, incorporating human-inspired adaptability while maintaining the benefits of their evolved efficiency. "The galaxy's watching us," Santos observed, reviewing reports from other civilizations. They'd never seen anything like this partnership before. Indeed, the alliance had sent shockwaves through known space. Other species, long intimidated by the collective's apparent biological superiority, now saw a new model of interstellar relations, one based on complementary strengths rather than dominance and submission. "They're calling it guided evolution," Valthrix projected with amusement. "The idea that consciousness can direct evolutionary development rather than merely responding to environmental pressure." Chen smiled. "It's more than that. It's the recognition that there are many paths to advancement. The collective's evolutionary approach gave you incredible capabilities, but it was humanity's perceived primitiveness that allowed us to think outside established patterns." The ceremony began, marking not just a political alliance, but a fundamental shift in how both species viewed progress. The new joint fleet, assembled in orbit, represented this philosophy in physical form. Kraken bioorganic vessels now incorporated human-designed quantum interfaces, while human ships carried evolved Kraken systems that enhanced their adaptability. "We've created something unprecedented," Chen remarked, watching as the combined fleet performed a synchronized maneuver that would have been impossible for either species alone. "Not just in terms of military power, but in our approach to progress itself." "Indeed," Valthrix agreed. "We evolved for perfection, you adapted for survival, but together we found something greater: the ability to choose our path forward." As the ceremony concluded, the assembled representatives witnessed a demonstration of the new quantum communication array. For the first time, human and Kraken consciousness merged in a controlled, sustainable way, sharing not just thoughts but entire paradigms of existence. This is the true evolution of war, Chen reflected, experiencing the blend of human intuition and Kraken efficiency through the array. Not the development of better weapons or defenses, but the ability to transform potential enemies into partners. The message spread across the galaxy. The age of singular evolution was over. The Kraken Collective, once the epitome of biological supremacy, had embraced a new kind of advancement, one that recognized the strength in diversity, the power in adaptation, and the wisdom in seeing through others' eyes. As human and Kraken ships patrolled their now shared space, they carried with them a lesson for all species. True superiority lies not in perfecting one path, but in having the courage to explore new ones. The future belonged not to those who evolved the furthest, but to those who could adapt to embrace the unknown. And in the vast darkness between the stars, potential adversaries looked upon this alliance and began to wonder if perhaps they too had been evolving in the wrong direction all along.